Hello, 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 Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur family. This is Shae, founder and chief fire igniter of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. And what we've been doing for the past few weeks is I have been sharing some of the most common objections and questions that I receive concerning the message in this book, Grace Over Grind, How Grace Will Take Your Business Where Grinding Can't. And so I believe this will be the last question on Grace Over Grind that I'm going to do for a little bit, because there's some other stuff that I want to talk about. And so we'll move on next week. But I want to address a very common question. Hi, Cherise. Hi, Christina. Good to see you both. If you're here, say hello. It's always fun to interact with you guys. All right. So here is a very common question. It doesn't always show up this way, but it shows up in some flavor of this. And that's basically, how do I balance the grind with the grace? Because I feel like I need both. Other ways this comes off is, I don't know how do I go from when I need to grind to when I need the grace? There's all types of ways that this question shows up, and I want to talk about it today. All right, so here's the thing. You don't have to balance the grind with the grace. You don't have to balance it. You want to know why? Because you don't have to grind. You don't have to do excessive hard work. You don't have to work in your business primarily in your own strength. The invitation that we have from Abba is to work in the infinite power of his grace. When Jesus said, do you think that when Jesus said that my yoke is easy and my burden is light, and that you don't have to, carry any heavy burdens? Do you think that when Jesus said it, that he meant sometimes? Or do you think when Jesus said it, that he just meant what he said? He said what he said, and that was just it. I believe that he said what he said, and that was it, which means that, I always talk about my favorite translation of that, which is Matthew 11:28-30 in the Message translation, where it talks about learning the unforced rhythms of grace, and how if you keep company with me, you'll learn how to live freely and lightly, and to walk with me and to work with me and watch how I do it, right? That whole thing. I don't believe that that is a temporary invitation. I don't believe that when Jesus says it, that he means that sometimes you can work by the unforced rhythms of my grace. Sometimes you can work by the infinite power of my grace. Sometimes you can work by the beauty of my favor and my rest. Sometimes. But then sometimes I just want you to handle it on your own. That's not what he meant. So you don't have to balance grind with grace. If we're doing this thing in a way that's God's best, it means that we annihilate grind, period. And we just work diligently in his rest and by his favor, but not excessive hard work and not working in our businesses primarily in our own strength. So the invitation is to not do that at all. And that when you find yourself doing it, it's a shift that you can make because you don't have to. Because you don't have to operate that way. Now, I want to talk about what I believe. Yes, Christina says, Jesus meant what he said. Yeah, I said what I said, right? Now, here's the thing. I want to talk about what I think people are kind of getting underneath when they ask this question. So let's kind of explore that a little bit. This is what I believe. What I believe is that many who ask this question are kind of in this place where they're like, I know that I have to do work. I agree, you do. But somehow there's a disconnect between there's seasons where I just feel like I have to do it. Like I have to do it. I have to get all this done. And I have to get all this done by this timeline, and it just has to get done. And then when I could just work in his grace. And there's this weird kind of separation between the two. When in reality, even if there is a pending deadline, and I don't mean your fake deadlines that you just put as your own inner slave driver, but I mean like legit deadlines. But even if you have like a legitimate deadline, Did you know that you can actually work diligently in his rest, even against a deadline? Sure can. And do you know that if you are in the middle of an intense deadline, a real deadline, most of our deadlines, by the way, are not real deadlines. They are inner slave driver. We feel like we have to get them done by a certain deadlines. So there's that. But even when we have those legitimate deadlines, there's something coming up. There's an event that's happening. The event's taking place, period. You can't move the date for the event. And there's things that have to get done before the event, right? Do you know that you could still work diligently in those couple of days before the event starting? You know you could still do that in his rest, even if it requires doing a little bit more than you might do on your average day. Do you know you could still do that in his rest and by his grace? You still can. He's still there. He still wants to give you insight. He still wants to give you ideas. He still may pull you aside and say, just sit with me for a minute. Stop doing that for a second. Just stop and just relax with me for a second. Do you know he might do that? And do you know that if he does, that you can actually just rest for a little bit? It's so funny. There was somebody who was telling me about an event that they had coming up, and she was, feeling the intense pressure behind the fact that this thing was coming up. So there's things that you had to do. And I'd said to her, she was feeling all kinds of stress. And I said, I think the event was coming up in like 3 days or something. And she goes, I know what you're going to tell me. I know what you're going to tell me, but I don't have time to rest. I don't have time to rest. And I said, I wasn't going to tell you to rest. I was going to tell you to do the things that you need to do in his rest. It's like a pause. Like, what do I do with that? I want you to be aware of his presence as you're doing the things that you're doing, because I want you to know that there's no pressure. The pressure is not on you, and that this is not all on you to carry. And that as you're doing the things that you need to do, there might be different ways to get things done. There may be things that you don't need to do that you think you need to do. There might be a phone call that you think you need to make that you don't. There may be a problem that you don't think you have a solution for, but you have it when you actually were still enough to engage with God. And so the whole thing is not always about physical rest, although it is also that too. I understand that there are times when there is an intense amount of things that need to get done. I know that because I live it. Every time that there's a date that was already said that this book was going to come out and you're getting relatively close to the book, whenever there's an event and the event date's not changing, whenever there's a program that's about to start, and it's like there's some things that got to get done because the program's starting on this day, some online program or whatever, like our certification. There's certain things I've got to get it done, period, right? But there's also been times where I'm feeling like, man, I'll give you an example, a recent example for me. Right now, we're in the middle of the beta process for our Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur certification. And I didn't create all the content up front. I'm creating the content as we go. And this summer has been relatively intense because, I had a daughter graduating, 2 daughters, elementary school graduation and a high school graduation going on. And there was a lot of intense things kind of going on with the family and a lot of interesting dynamics going on. And so I had to get this stuff done for the certification. But every time I sat down to work on it, it was like I felt the weight of it. It's like I wasn't able to flow freely. It really felt like I have to do this. Like I felt like the weight of it and I wasn't progressing. And I couldn't understand, why am I I don't want to fight against this because this stuff should flow. Like I live this stuff, this should flow. Why is this feeling so hard? And it was because I was feeling the pressure. I was being led by the pressure of the deadline. I was being led by the pressure of a deadline. And so I was like, I need to step away from this for a second because I'm just not in a good place with this. And so what I did, even though I had a gazillion other things to do, and I had this short amount of time that I thought I needed to get this thing done in, I took a step back and I said, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go talk to the Lord. I'm going to go for a walk. And I stepped away. Now, if I'm being led by the pressure, I'm going to stay right there and I'm going to fight through it. I'm going to push through it because I just know it's going to come. I'm going to keep pushing. But instead, I walked away. I walked away and I was hanging out with the Lord and I was like, I know that this thing is not supposed to be done out of pressure. And I know that this stuff should actually flow. This should not be hard. And so I took that walk with him. And, I just enjoyed my walk with him. And he gave me a little bit of a tidbit on how I could handle what I needed to do. And do you know, I actually ended up not doing it all that day. I ended up stopping completely, not even trying to do it that day, because there was other things that were on my mind, which is what was affecting what I needed to go, what I was doing at that time. So he said, go take care of those things. So what I did, I went and took care of those things. And even though I had this deadline that needed to get done, the next day when I sat down, after dealing with the things that he said, go deal with that stuff first, when I went down to sit down the next time, do you know it was done in an hour? What I was trying to push and force to take place over 3 hours time, that I really honestly didn't have 3 hours to be working on it because I had a gazillion other things, family and other things to get done. No, he's like, nope, just take a break. I'm not going to push through. And so even when you're upon deadlines, the idea that you have to push through, that you have to make it happen, and you've got to do it in your own strength and acting as if God is not with you, that's a lie. It's a lie to believe that that is the way you need to do that, and that I just need to be able to balance that because God desires for me to do hard work. No, God desires for you to do diligent work with him. And that's the invitation. And I keep saying invitation, and I mean it when I say invitation, because you don't have to say yes to it. And if God's not forcing himself on you to do business by the power of his grace. He's not forcing that. You can do work however you want. You can grind things out till kingdom come if that's what you want to do. He'll let you do it. So it is an invitation. It's an invitation. Do you want to experience me? Do you want to do this with me? Do you want to experience my best? Do you actually want to have a greater kingdom impact through what you're doing? Do you actually want to bring glory to me in this? For real, for real. You don't have to, but I'm here. And I'm always here. And at any moment that you decide that you want to say yes to that, I'm still here. I didn't go anywhere. So it is an invitation. It's an invitation. And you don't have to balance your grind ever with his grace. Let me see if there's any questions. Let's see. Christina says there's so many scriptures about working with him. Exactly. Completely unnecessary to do things without him. Yes. Angela finally caught us live. Yay. What's going on, Desiree? Arbitrary or self-determined? Exactly. Because Des, you know we do it. And I know I do it. I know I do it. Self-imposed deadlines. That then you're then pressured. You put pressure on your own self against your own deadline that you made up. And if you just sat for a second and thought, really? So if I actually did this 2 days later, would it really matter? If this actually happened a week later, would it really matter? But we will, in the intensity of having to meet our own self-imposed deadlines, we'll start grinding and doing things in our own strength. No need for that. Let's see. Christina had this happen with an event that she was doing, a 3-day event. She did it totally in his rest and by his grace, and it was so much easier than she expected. Yes, Latara had this experience with a book. Yep. Yes, I'm seeing lots of comments around these self-imposed deadlines. Yes. Bettina says you've gotten so much better about this because of these lessons. I'm so grateful for that. So grateful. Let me see if there's any questions. Are there any questions on this? Angela says she is the queen of self-imposed deadlines and then praying at the last minute for the Lord to come through. I love the honesty of that. And the fact that you recognize it as quickly as you say that you are the queen of self-imposed deadlines and then praying for the last minute for the Lord to come through means that you recognize exactly where you are and you can be the queen of working in his grace. It's as simple as a decision, right? So you guys, like, if you really want to walk this out, I mean, really, first step is actually recognizing. I did a whole thing a couple of weeks ago about what are the signs of the grind? How do you know if you're grinding in the first place? What does that feel like? How do I know? Because it can be so sneaky because it's such a way that we operate, whether it's grinding in our minds or grinding in other ways, right? So we already did a video about that. So you can go and look at that, listen to that, whatever. But if you really want to walk this thing out, this is why this book was written. Grace over grind, how grace will take your business where grinding can't. And it's going to shift your thinking. And it's going to, if you actually do the exercises that are in the book, there's a whole bunch of ask Holy Spirit this, ask Holy Spirit that, because in the asking And then the willingness to sit and hear the responses, that's where the power lies. All the transformations that I'm hearing coming from Grace Over Grind, some of it is because of the message itself. Yes, that's awesome. The message within it is it's good. It was God, it's good. But it comes right down your lane when you say to Holy Spirit, okay, I'm reading this. This is resonating with me. I want to accept your invitation. I see what this can be like. And you ask him the very personal questions from the prompts in the book about you. He's going to give you answers for you and answers for your business and what you're doing in your season, not comparing what your Grace Over Grind will look like to my Grace Over Grind or your friend's Grace Over Grind. It's completely different. One of the things I love is having conversations with people in various business types who are walking this out, because there's very unique things that people have to deal with. I was talking to a farmer the other day about how Grace Over Grind can look for a farmer. Talking to, Alicia, she has a bakery. Grace Over Grind for her as a bakery, as a storefront bakery, waking up at the wee hours of the morning, going into the bakery, the whole thing. What does Grace Over Grind look like for her? Versus somebody who is, mostly an online business owner who sits at their home office all the time and they have their own unique issues. Versus the person who also does the same exact thing that they do, but they have kids that are younger that require a whole bunch more attention in their house because they're also homeschooling, versus the person who's not. You can't compare your working by the infinite powers of God's grace with somebody else's. Just know that it's available to you. It is an invitation he has for you, no matter who you are, no matter what your work is. I don't care. You can come to me about any business type, any business thing, and I'll tell you it's possible for you, because it is. And if you don't think it's possible, then what is that saying? Jesus said, if Jesus said it, it's done. It's done. So it's yours if you want it. If you want to get more on this message around Grace Over Grind, head over to graceovergrind.com, grab a copy of the book, and don't just read it. Read it, meditate it on it, do all the stuff that's in it. Ask the questions that are in it, and it will change the way you do business. Okay. And also, I think we have a deadline coming up. If you want to join our Igniters mentoring program, it's another way to really walk this thing out, because not only are you reading the book, right? You can read the book and that's great. And you can walk it out. You can even get with a group of people. Christina, she's leading a group of people through reading the book together and kind of walking through it together. But if you want one-on-one mentorship and you want a global community of folks who are going to walk out this thing with you around kingdom-driven entrepreneurship, hop into Igniters mentoring program. I'm looking at my calendar because I know we've got dates. All right, today's the 19th. June 23rd, which is this Sunday, is the deadline for joining Igniters mentoring program. The next round starts on July the 1st. So if you go to kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com/mentoring, you can get all the details around our Igniters mentoring program. And I promise you, nobody goes into Igniters mentoring program and stays the same unless they choose not to engage at all. If you engage in any way, from the curriculum, from the one-on-ones, from the actually doing the work and allowing God to just meet you right where you're at, you can't be the same. And your business can't be the same after you're not the same. Okay. So anyway, let me do one quick check before I get out of here. Ann says the self-anything is a bad plan. Oh man. Hey, Rico, good to see you here. Christina is giving the thumbs up on the exercises in Grace Over Grind. Yes, that's it. Bettina says, I'm going to go back and reread my answers. Yes, do that. Do that. We have one of our Igniters. She has the book and she has the audio book. And she has listened to the audiobook. She said, I have listened to the audiobook over 100 times because it's not long. It's like a little over an hour. So she has listened to the audiobook over 100 times, and she's read the book multiple times. And she says every time, she goes, I listen to it every day, a few times a week, because it continues to reiterate things that I need to walk in. But then every time I go back and read the physical book, God shows me something else that I didn't see the last time I read the book. And he gives me something that's for today, not for the time when I was reading the book last time, but when I'm reading it today. And what do I need for right now with what he's doing right now? And it's been amazing. It's actually been extraordinary seeing the shifts that are taking place in her life and in her business. It's so cool. And so just walk this thing out. It's available to you. It really is. So anyway, that's it. You can head over to graceovergrind.com for that. And if you're going to join Igniter's mentoring program, that's at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com/mentoring. Okay. Love you all. Take care. God bless.